Hello and welcome. Find a comfortable position. Allow the weight of your body to settle and the sounds of the world outside to fade into the background. Your only task now is to rest, to listen, and to let your mind drift. Tonight, we are traveling back in time, but not to the grand halls of kings or the heat of famous battles. Our journey takes us to a quieter, harsher, and more fundamental place. We are going to the cold shores of Viking Age Scandinavia, to a time of iron and wood and wind. Forget the legends of horned helmets and glorious warriors for a moment. The sagas, for all their power, speak of only a fraction of the lives that were lived. Most of those lives were not spent on the prow of a longship, but on the unforgiving soil of a small, coastal farm. They were lives of profound struggle, deep-rooted tradition, and quiet resilience. So, take a slow, deep breath. Let the air fill your lungs and release gently. We are leaving the complexities of our world behind and stepping into the rhythm of theirs. A rhythm dictated by the sun, the seasons, and the sea. There is no need to hurry. There is nothing to do but listen as we explore what it was really like to be a Viking farmer. Segment 1. What it was really like to be a Viking farmer. Imagine yourself waking. There is no sunlight to guide you, not yet. The first thing you notice is the cold, damp air on your face. The second is the smell, a thick, pervasive scent of wood smoke, damp earth, unwashed wool, and the faint, animal warmth of the livestock that may have shared this space with you through the coldest nights. You are in a long house, a single, cavernous room, perhaps 60 feet long, built with a sturdy timber frame and walls made of waterland daub or thick turf. There are no windows, only a narrow opening high in the thatched roof to let the smoke from the central fire pit escape. This smoke is a constant companion. It stings the eyes and coats every surface with a thin layer of soot, but it also keeps the insects at bay in the warmer months. You push aside the heavy animal hides that serve as your blanket. You are sleeping on a raised wooden bench that runs along the wall of space for sleeping, for sitting, for working. The floor beneath your bare feet is hard-packed turf, cool and unyielding. The fire in the long, stone-lined hearth at the center of the room has been banked for the night, reduced to a bed of glowing embers. It is the heart of the home, the only source of light and warmth, the place where meals are cooked and stories are told. This is where your day and your life is centered. A life lived not by the clock, but by the inexorable cycle of the seasons. The long dark of winter for months, the world is shrouded in a deep and profound twilight. The sun is a pale, fleeting visitor, barely climbing above the horizon before sinking away again. This is a time of turning inward. The work of the farm is not over, but it has changed. The world outside is frozen solid, covered in a blanket of snow and ice. The rhythm of your days is slow and repetitive. The primary task is one of maintenance. You must tend to the animals, a few cattle, some sheep, perhaps a goat, ensuring their precious fodder, hay harvested in the summer, is rationed to last until the spring thaw. Their survival is your survival. For you, there is indoor work. If you are a man, you might spend the dim hours by the fire, mending your tools. You run your hands over the wooden shaft of an axe, checking for splits. You carefully sharpen an iron blade on a whetstone, a slow, scraping sound that becomes a familiar part of the winter's quiet song. You might carve a new handle for a knife, or work on mending a fishing net, your fingers nimble and sure even in the flickering light. If you are a woman, your hands are never still. The warp-weighted loom stands against one wall, a tall, vertical frame. The process of weaving the coarse, woolen cloth, or vommel, is long and laborious. You pass the shuttle back and forth, back and forth. The rhythmic clack of the woodman waits a comforting, steady beat in the stillness of the long house. This cloth will become the tunics, trousers, and cloaks that protect your family from the biting cold. It is a currency as valuable as silver. The days are filled with these small, essential tasks. Grinding barley or rye with a stone quern for the day's porridge. Mending clothes with a bone needle. Telling stories to the children old tales of gods and giants, of heroes and monsters, to pass the time and to pass on your culture. The air is thick with the smell of boiling grain and the sound of the wind howling outside the thick turf walls, a constant reminder of the formidable power of nature held at bay. This is a season of patience, of waiting, and of the quiet fear that your stored food might not be enough. The desperate work of spring then, slowly, a change begins. The light lingers for a few moments longer each day. The deep cold begins to lose its iron grip. The sound of dripping water from the thawing roof is a welcome herald of spring. But this is no time for rest. It is a time of desperate, frantic work. The window for planting is short and unforgiving. As soon as the ground is workable, you are out in the fields. The air is still bitingly cold, and the earth smells rich and damp. Your primary tool is the art, is simple plough, perhaps pulled by a pair of oxen, or, if your farm is small, pulled by you and your family. It does not turn the soil like a modern plough. It simply cuts a shallow furrow into the rocky, resistant ground. The work is agonizing. Your muscles ache as you guide the art, fighting against stones and roots. It is a constant struggle, moving slowly across the small field that represents your family's hope for the coming year. Once the furrows are cut, you walk the lines, carefully sowing the precious seeds barley, oats, rye. You can feel the weight of the future in the small leather pouch of seeds at your hip. A late frost, a week of heavy rain, the flock of hungry birds, any of these could spell disaster. There is no room for error. This is a life lived on a tenuous margin. The land does not give its bounty easily. It must be earned every single year, with sweat and worry. The brief light of summer in the north is a time of explosive, verdant life. The days are long, stretching into luminous, seemingly endless twilight. The farm is a hive of activity. The crops need constant weeding. The small kitchen garden, or kale good, must be tended, producing cabbages, onions, and beans that provide a welcome, if brief, change to the diet. The livestock is moved to higher altitude summer pastures, a practice that allows your home fields to recover and grow hay for the winter. This often means weeks or months away from the main longhouse, living in a smaller, simpler hut is cell. The sea, a constant presence, becomes a vital source of food there. You take to the water in a small boat, a fring, to fish for a cod and herring in the fjord. You check fishing lines and nets, hoping for a catch that can be eaten fresh or, more importantly, preserved. You gather seabird eggs from the cliffs and forage for berries and edible plants in the woods. Every resource must be utilized, every opportunity seized. There is a sense of urgency underlying the long, bright days, and knowledge that this period of abundance is fleeting. The harvest of autumn as the light begins to wane and the air grows crisp once more, the most critical season arrives, the harvest. The entire family works from the first light of dawn to the last. You move through the fields of barley and rye, cutting the stalks with a small, crescent-shaped iron sickle. The work is back-breaking, bending and rising, hour after hour. Once cut, The grain must be dried and then fresh beaten to separate the edible grain from the stalk and chaff. Then comes the careful accounting. A portion of your harvest is owed to the local chieftain, the jull, as a tax or tribute. The rest must be stored with immense care, protected from damp and pests. This is your family's sustenance for the long, dark months ahead. The success or failure of this single harvest determines everything. At the same time, the work of preservation is paramount. Fish are gutted and hung on wooden racks to be dried by the wind, or they are heavily salted. Meat from any slaughtered livestock is smoked or salted as well. The bounty of the summer must be made to last through the scarcity of winter. The rhythm of their lives was this constant oscillation between abundance and scarcity, light and dark, hope and fear. It was a life of profound hardship, but also one of deep connection to the earth and the turning of the year. It required a strength and a resilience that is hard for us, in our world of warmth and light, to truly comprehend. And yet, not every life was destined to follow this same, repeating cycle. From this world of hardship and tradition, great stories could still rise sagas not of kings in gilded halls, but of explorers who pushed the boundaries of their known world. The life of a farmer was a circle, a wheel turning with the seasons. The life of an explorer was a line, drawn across a blank map into the unknown. Our story now turns to one such man, a son of Greenland, whose fortune and fate would lead him far beyond the fishing grounds of his home. This is the story of Leif Erikson. Segment 2, the saga of Leif Erikson, the fortunate son to understand Leif. One must first understand his father, Eric the Red. Eric was a man of fierce ambition and a volatile temper, a personality that led him to be exiled, first from his home in Norway, and then from Iceland. He was a man who, when his world ran out of space for him, simply created a new one. He sailed west from Iceland and founded the Norse settlement in Greenland, a testament to his sheer force of will. Leif was his son, raised in this remote outpost of the Norse world. His childhood would have been steeped in the same realities as any other Greenlander: the biting cold, the reliance on the sea, the stories of the old gods whispered round the fire. The ship he would sail is not the fearsome warship of popular culture, but a sturdy merchant vessel known as an Air. It is wide-beamed, built for cargo and the treacherous waves of the North Atlantic, with a single large, square sail. His journey was not one of conquest, but of connection, a pilgrimage to the ancestral homeland. The voyage itself was an ordeal of endurance. Weeks spent on the open ocean, out of sight of land. The world becomes a simple, elemental place, the endless grey-green swell of the water, the vast expanse of the sky, the constant creak of the ship's timbers, and the snap of the woolen sail in the wind. The crew would huddle together for warmth. Their diet the same monotonous fare of dried fish and hard bread. Life's role would have been to navigate, using the sun by day and the stars by night, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon, reading the waves and the wind. It was a journey that forged a deep, intimate understanding of the sea. He arrived in Norway at the court of King Olaf Tryggvason. Here, Leif would have encountered a world of power and sophistication far beyond his quiet Greenland home. But more importantly, he encountered a powerful new idea that was sweeping across Scandinavia. King Olaf was a zealous Christian, and his court was the epicenter of this new faith. For Leif, a pragmatic and forward-thinking man, the appeal of Christianity would have been twofold. It was a faith with a compelling narrative and a structure that promised a different kind of order than the fatalistic world of the old gods. It was also the faith of a powerful king. To embrace Christianity was to gain favor, to show oneself as a modern, sophisticated man aligned with the future. Leif converted and spent the winter in the king's service, learning the ways of this new religion and this new kind of power. When spring arrived, King Olaf gave Leif a commission. He was to sail back to Greenland and bring Christianity to its people, to convert the colony his pagan father had founded. It was a charge that placed Leif in direct opposition to his father's traditions, but it also gave him a purpose and an authority that was entirely his own. Leif set sail for Greenland, his ship laden with priests and the materials to build a church. But the North Atlantic is a fickle master. The sagas tell us that his ship was caught in storms, beset by fog, driven far off course for many days. He lost his way. The sun and stars, his trusted guides, were hidden behind a thick veil of grey. He was, for a time, lost in the vast, empty wilderness of the ocean. And then, one day, the fog lifted, and on the horizon was a sight that no Norseman had ever seen before. It was land. Unfamiliar, unexpected land. Driven by curiosity and the need for fresh water and supplies, Leif guided his ship towards the coast. The first land they encountered was barren and forbidding. Great glaciers gleamed in the distance, and the land itself was a vast, shattered plain of flat, grey stones. There was no soil, no greenery. Leif, ever the pragmatist, saw that this land held no promise for a settlement. He named it Helioland, the land of flat stones, and, without lingering, sailed on. He guided the ship south, keeping the coastline in sight. The next land they came upon was a world away from the first. It was a flat, low-lying country, covered as far as the eye could see with a dense, dark forest. The sight of so many trees, so much timber, would have been astonishing to a man from the treeless landscapes of Greenland and Iceland. The air itself smelled of pine and damp earth. This Leif named Markland the land of forests. It was a place of immense wealth in resources, a treasure trove of timber for a people who had to rely on driftwood. They may have landed briefly, but still, this was not what they sought. It did not feel like a place to call home. They pushed on, sailing south once more, and it was here that Leif's fortune, his defining characteristic in the sagas, revealed itself. They came to a shore that was different. The climate was gentler, the air softer. They found a place where a river flowed out into the sea, a river so rich with salmon that they were larger than any Leif or his crew had ever seen in the waters of Greenland or Norway. They decided to stay. They drew their ship ashore and built simple turf shelters for the winter, temporary dwellings they called Leifsbor, or Leif's boots, as they explored this new country. They found lush meadows perfect for grazing, a climate so mild that the winter frost was gentle. And most remarkably of all, they found wild grapes growing on vines. The discovery of grapes, which could be made into wine, was so significant that Leif named this new, gentle paradise Finland the land of wine. For an entire winter, they lived in this new world, a small group of Norsemen on a continent unknown to them. They repaired their ship, cut timber, and explored the gentle landscape, gathering grapes and feasting on salmon. It was a quiet, peaceful interlude, a moment of profound discovery born not of a grand design, but of being lost. As spring returned, Leif Erikson, the fortunate son, loaded his ship with a cargo of timber and dried grapes, and set sail once more, this time navigating a direct and confident course back to Greenland. He had fulfilled his commission in a way no one could have predicted. He had found not just a route home, but a new world. A quiet, green shore that would ignite the imagination of his people and become the source of one of history's most enduring mysteries. Leif Erikson's return to Greenland with tales of a new world, and a cargo of timber and wine grapes to prove it, was not the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of a short, mysterious chapter in the Norse sagas. The stories tell of further voyages led by Leif's siblings of attempts to establish more permanent settlement of the first European child born in the Americas, and of the first encounters, some peaceful, some hostile, with the native peoples of this new land, whom the Norse called Skrullings. But then, the stories fall silent. The Vinland voyages, which burned so brightly for a few short years, flicker and die out. For nearly 1,000 years, Vinland became a ghost, a half-remembered myth preserved only in the pages of two medieval Icelandic manuscripts. Many believed it was just that, a fiction, a sailor's tall tale. The story was held in the ink of the sagas, but the proof, it turned out, was held in the earth itself, waiting patiently under a remote, windswept meadow for the right hands to uncover it. Our journey now leaves the realm of the saga and enters the world of archaeology, as we seek the quiet, physical truth of the lost colony of Vinland. Segment 3, The Lost Colony of Vinland and the land's Ox Meadows mystery. For centuries, historians and adventurers searched for Vinland's location, poring over the scant details in the sagas, trying to match the descriptions to the vast coastline of North America. The search seemed hopeless, a quest for a needle in a continental haystack. Then, in the 1960s, a Norwegian husband and wife team, the explorer Helge Ingstad and the archaeologist Stein Ingstad, followed a new line of reasoning. They believed the key was not Vinland itself, but the temporary settlement Leif had built, a base camp from which to explore. After a long search, they were guided by locals to a place on the very northernmost tip of Newfoundland, in Canada. It was a place of low, grassy mounds near a windswept cove, a place the French fishermen had long ago named Land's Ox Meadows, the Cove at the Meadows. To the untrained eye, it was just a series of gentle, overgrown humps in the landscape. But to the Ingstads, the layout was eerily familiar. With careful excavation, these quiet mounds began to give up their secrets. They were not natural formations. They were the collapsed turf walls of ancient buildings, the faint but unmistakable footprint of a Norse settlement. Let us walk through this silent ghost of a settlement. The excavations revealed 3 distinct complexes, each consisting of a large hall and smaller adjoining rooms. The construction was identical to the long houses of Greenland and Iceland. The main great hall in each complex featured a long, central fire pit for warmth and cooking, and raised platforms along the walls for sleeping and working. This was the heart of their life, a transplanted piece of the old world on a new shore. Standing within the excavated foundations, you can almost feel the presence of its former inhabitants, huddled round a fire nearly a millennium ago. But it was more than just living quarters. The archaeologists uncovered workshops, places of industry. In one area, they found a small furnace and more than 100 pieces of iron slag, the waste product of smelting, along with several rusted iron bolt rivets. This was the smoking gun. Ironworking was a technology unknown to the indigenous peoples of North America at that time. This was definitive proof of a Norse presence. This was a smithy, a place for forging new tools and, crucially, for repairing the essential iron fittings of their ships. Another building was clearly a workshop. For a carpentry, the floor was littered with wood chips and shavings, evidence of men working to repair their precious ocean-going vessels, the lifelines that connected them to the world they knew. And then, amidst the dirt and stone, they found the small, personal items. The quiet objects of daily life that give a human face to history. They found a bronze, ring-headed pin of a style common throughout the Viking world, used to fasten a cloak at the shoulder, a simple, functional, yet personal object lost 1,000 years ago that speaks of an individual standing in the cold, adjusting their woolen cloak against the wind. Perhaps most significantly, they found a soapstone spindle whorl, a small, weighted disc used for spinning yarn from wool. It is a humble object, but its importance is immense. Spinning was exclusively women's work in Norse society. This small stone disc is the undeniable proof that women were present at Land's ox meadows. This was not merely a hunting party or a temporary camp of male explorers. This was an attempt at a true settlement, a place of families. The discoveries continued to align with the sagas in uncanny ways. Archaeologists unearthed butternut shells near one of the hearths. Butternuts are a type of walnut that does not grow in Newfoundland. Their native habitat is further south, in the milder climate of the St. Lawrence River Valley. The presence of these shells is proof that the inhabitants of El Ant's Oaks Meadows were not static. They were explorers. They journeyed south from this space camp, deeper into the continent, found these nuts and brought them back, just as the sagas described the exploration of the wider land they called Vinland. The evidence was overwhelming. This was it. A real, tangible Norse settlement in North America, 500 years before Columbus. And this discovery solved one mystery, only to deepen another. If they made it here, built these substantial structures, brought their families, and began to explore, why did they leave? The settlement at Land's Oaks Meadows was occupied for only a few years. Perhaps a decade at most. Why was it abandoned? The earth gives no single, simple answer. But it offers clues that, combined with the sagas, allow us to speculate. The first and most dramatic reason is conflict. The sagas are clear that after initial, tentative trading, relations with the native Skrillings broke down into violence. The Norse, with their iron weapons, had a technological advantage, but they were a tiny handful of people in a vast, populated land. They were the intruders. The constant threat of attack, the psychological burden of living in a state of perpetual fear, would have been exhausting. Life at Land's Oaks Meadows was a life on a hostile frontier. Another reason may have been internal. An isolated community under immense pressure is a fragile thing. The sagas hint at disputes among the Norse themselves, quarrels over resources, leadership, and the few women present. The social fabric of this tiny community, stretched thin across an ocean, may simply have torn apart. But the most likely, and perhaps most mundane, reason for their departure was the sheer unsustainability of it all. Land's Oaks Meadows was at the very end of an impossibly long and tenuous supply chain. It was 1,000 miles from the main colony in Greenland, which was itself a struggling outpost. Any support, any new supplies or settlers, had to survive one of the most dangerous sea crossings in the world. It was simply too far. The New World was rich, but their connection to their own was too fragile to maintain. They were a whisper on a continent, and in the end, the silence of the vast wilderness was stronger. And so they left. They packed up their most valuable tools, loaded their ships, and sailed away, leaving behind only the ghosts of their buildings and a few lost or discarded items. The turf walls of their homes slowly crumbled and grassed over, becoming the quiet, mysterious mounts that would keep their secret for almost 1,000 years, a silent testament to a brief, Remarkable moment when the map of the world was secretly redrawn, and then, just as quickly, forgotten. The story of Vinland is one of reaching for something new, a dream that ultimately faded on a distant shore. It was a story from the edge of the Norse world. Now, let us return to its heart. Let us leave the periphery and travel to the center of the web, to a life that was not defined by the struggle for a subsistence, but by the management of power. While the farmer fought against the soil and the explorer fought against the sea, the Jarl, the chieftain, fought a different kind of battle, one of influence, obligation, and strategy. We leave the humble longhouse of the farmer and step into the great hall of the Lord. This is the World of the Viking Jarl. Segment 4. The World of the Viking Jarl. The great hall of a Jarl is an echo of the farmer's longhouse, but magnified in every way. It is longer, wider, and built with massive, expertly joined timbers. The central hearth is a roaring fire, casting a warm, golden light high up to the smoke-stained rafters. The air does not smell of damp and subsistence, but of roasting meat, beeswax, and the faint, pleasant scent of honeyed mead. The walls are not bare, but are hung with deep red woolen tapestries and, more importantly, with shields, polished, painted shields belonging to the Jarl's huskarls, his household warriors. His personal guard, their presence speaks to the core of the Jarl's world. His power is not abstract. It is embodied by the loyal men who eat at his table and fight at his side. The Jarl's life is one of constant, strategic performance, and his great hall is the stage. His primary duty is one of generosity. To be a great lord, you must be a great gift giver. Imagine a feast in this hall, the Long. Wooden tables are laden with food that the common farmer could only dream of. Roasted boar, venison, fresh bread and cheese, drinking horns, some rimmed with silver, are passed round, filled with strong ale or sweet mead. At the head of the hall sits the Jarl, observing all. A bod, a skald, stands near the fire, reciting a long poem, a saga of heroes or a verse in praise of the Jarl's own deeds. This is not simply a party. It is the glue of their society. The Jarl is demonstrating his wealth, his ability to provide. He is rewarding his followers, forging bonds of loyalty with his neighbors and creating obligations. The feast is a political act, a display of the success that makes men want to follow you. When the feast is over and the morning light streams in, the Jarl's next duty emerges, that of the lawgiver. His power is not absolute like that of a later king. It relies on the respect of the free farmers in his domain. He presides over the local assembly, the Thing. This was often held outdoors, in a designated field or on a hillside. Here, landowners would gather to air grievances, settle disputes over property lines, inheritance, or matters of honor. The Jarl did not act as a judge in our modern sense. He was a mediator, an arbiter, whose influence and wisdom guided the assembly to a consensus. He would listen to both sides of a dispute, consult with other important men, and then propose a solution, often a payment of fines in silver or goods. His power rested on his ability to find outcomes that the community would accept as just. It was a delicate balance of authority and respect. Beyond the hall and the assembly field, the Jarl was a shrewd economic manager. He was the largest landowner in the region, and the tribute from the farmers, the grain, the wool. The livestock we spoke of earlier flowed into his storehouses. His wife, the lady of the estate, would be a powerful figure in her own right, managing the vast household, overseeing the production of cloth and food, and directing the work of servants and slaves. The Jarl himself looked outwards. He managed trade, not as a merchant haggling in a marketplace, but as a facilitator. He might use his ships to send wool and falcons off to Europe. in exchange for Frankish swords, fine German glass, and, most importantly, silver. This silver was the lifeblood of his power. It was the currency he used to pay his warriors, to adorn his wife, and to give as gifts to seal alliances. His great hall was not just a home. It was the central office of a complex economic enterprise. And finally, there is the matter of the raid. In our minds, this is the defining feature of the Viking Age. But for a Jarl, it was a calculated part of his economic and political strategy. Let us not imagine the chaos of battle. Instead, imagine the Jarl in his hall during the long winter. With his most trusted captains, he plans. They discuss reports of wealthy but poorly defended monasteries or towns across the sea. They calculate the risks, the number of ships and men required, the potential rewards. A raid was a high-risk venture, a seasonal expedition planned with the cool logic of a businessman, if successful. It brought in the wealth needed to maintain his position as a generous lord. It gave his young warriors experience and a share of the plunder, ensuring their loyalty. It was a fundamental, if brutal, part of the political and economic system that kept the Great Hall warm and the drinking horns full. The life of the Jarl, then, was not one of ease. It was a constant, draining effort to maintain a delicate balance of power. While the farmer's fears were of frost and blight, the Jarl's fears were of a loss of influence, a failed expedition, or a rival chieftain whose hall was more magnificent and whose gifts were more generous. It was a life lived at the center of the web, and every vibration, every tremor, had to be felt and managed with strength and cunning. We have journeyed far tonight. We have felt the chill of the earth in a farmer's dark lone house. We have sailed the cold, grey waters of the Atlantic with a fortunate explorer. We have stood in a quiet, windswept meadow, listening for the echoes of a lost colony. And we have sat in the firelit warmth of a great hall, amidst the power and politics of a chieftain. The world of the Vikings was not one story, but a tapestry woven from all these threads. The life of struggle and the life of power. The journey outward into the unknown, and the return to the traditions of home. It was a world of profound hardship, lived without the comforts we take for granted. A world where survival was a daily victory, and power was as fleeting as the summer light. And now, our journey is at its end. The stories of the sagas, the dust of archaeology, the ghosts of the past, we can let them all go. They belong to their time, a world 1,000 years away. Your world, now, is this quiet room, the comfort of your bed, the steady, gentle rhythm of your own breathing. There are no fields to plow, no oceans to cross, no halls to manage. There is only the peace of the present moment and the deep, restorative promise of sleep. Let the silence be your harbor. Let the darkness be your blanket. And now, simply rest.